Hi, gorgeous. Welcome to episode number 15 with the wonderful Dondi Scumaci.
Hello, this is Dondi Scumaci. You're listening to Heartsells with Schlonski. Enjoy.
Before we dive into the interview, gorgeous, make sure you check out the 7-day free challenge to ask for the sale with confidence. You find the sign-up page at christineschlonski.com/challenge. And now let's dive in. Dondi Scumaci is an international speaker known for her high energy presentations that produce dramatic results. She's also a best-selling author, and she has presented her workshops and keynotes all over the globe, like in the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, South Africa, so just that you get an idea. And today she is presenting with us, and I'm so super excited for this conversation because we already have found out that we have a lot of things in common, and I am super pumped to share her amazing wisdom with you. So welcome, Dondi.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. We just talked about your amazing bio and your new book that just is out there, Career Moves. You've done so many wonderful things in your life to empower people to actually live their life the way they want it. Because one thing you say is grow is about a life well lived. And I would like to start here for the listeners. Is there anything of you or an aspect in your expertise that we are not aware of?
I think that my work, the work that I've put together over the years probably comes from this place of, I think I lived for a long time in my career taking pretty good care of the things that were put on my plate. But I wasn't reaching for things intentionally, right? So I was very responsible and I was dependable and quite successful. It wasn't until much later that I figured out that I could design it, right? I could design a life that was really suited to me, my strengths, my passions, right, my interests, my values. And that's when I started to explore, right, how do you empower people? But I would say that most of what I have put together, most of what I've learned, I have experienced. So, for example, recently someone wrote a thank you note to me for a book that I had written, and they had read it, and the comment was, I found some power in that book. She said, I was surprised at how low my confidence was. I didn't even realize it. So maybe the expertise comes from the experience, right, of being in that place where you're not feeling super confident, or you aren't designing a path, or you aren't connecting, as you would say, managing the value so that it resonates with other people.
Yeah. Oh, that so totally resonates with me. And I know many people that are listening today are already entrepreneurs, or they are thinking about being an entrepreneur, and trying to figure out how can we make this work. And a very big issue is asking for what you truly want. And especially when you have a business, you need to ask for the sale, or you need to make an invitation to a sale. So how is your experience? Because, you seem so confident and so self-assured. Have you always been that way, or was it something that you learned and that you developed in your life?
I love that question. And the answer is no. I have not always been so self-assured and so confident. And you know what? Sometimes I'm still not, right? Sometimes I still feel like I lose my step a bit, and I have to step back and take that deep breath and remember who I am and remember the value that I drive. So a little bit of it, I think, is about giving yourself emotional permission. In my second book, Grow, and also in my first one, Design for Success, I talked about the beliefs that limit us. And that's an exercise that I think every human, and especially people who are moving in that entrepreneurial path, need to really step back and say, what do I believe that is empowering me, and what do I believe that's limiting me? And when I really did that searching and that exploring with my own belief system of what I believed about myself, about my ability, my capability, my value, I certainly did find some empowering beliefs that really fueled me and gave me that confidence to step out and to take some risks. But I also found some significant beliefs that limited me. And one of those, I often joke about it. I have the approval seeking gene in my body, and I think a lot of people, I want people to be pleased. I want them to be over the top pleased with my effort, right? I want them, I want top spin on the ball. I never wanted it to be mediocre. And so I would be constantly monitoring the reactions of everyone else. In fact, if I got the feeling that someone was displeased or didn't approve, I would start to perform harder, work harder. And what I realized was that I was really, that whole self-monitoring, getting all up in my own head, was actually becoming a barrier. And I had to take that belief, and it is important for people to approve of you, and I had to turn that into, it is important to make an impact, because it's not about you at all. It's about them. It's about it's about the value that you're delivering. And if you make it about yourself, you're going to get all up in your own head. Absolutely. So I also think, you remind me of something that I've really been working on recently. I ride a horse. His name is Fortunato, and Fortunato is a rescue horse that is becoming kind of fancy in dressage. And when his trainer rides him, he's very fancy. When I ride him, not so much yet, but I'm getting better. And I remember, not too long ago, I was in a lesson with my instructor, and he would throw his shoulder, he'd swing his hip out. We looked drunk. We did. We looked like we were drunk. We couldn't walk in a straight line, and he wasn't really he wasn't picking up on my cues. And she said, the problem is that you've not developed a core where you're stabilized to where you're reacting to everything that he's doing. So when he slips a shoulder out, then you push on that shoulder, and then he slides the other way. You're just reacting and reacting and reacting, and then counter reacting, and the two of you are just bouncing off of each other like a pinball. She said, what if you were to create a core? What if you were to create this stable core, and no matter what he's doing, you hold your core. You keep inviting him back into that space, that more productive space. You stop reacting to it, and you just find your own stability, so that no matter what's going on around you or under you, in this example, you are stabilized. And it was amazing. And as from a horse riding perspective, it was amazing at the difference that it made. But I started thinking about that in our own lives as entrepreneurs. What if we were to create such a core? And when I say core, that to stabilize ourselves in the moment, in those highly evaluative moments, in those moments when we're asking for the business, in those moments where we might not be feeling super confident, what if we had already created a core? And what would that look like? It would be a set of decisions that you make. So for example, for an entrepreneur, it might be the decision I make is that I am worth the money that I charge, right? I'm giving value. There's an exchange there, and that's a fair exchange. That's a decision, right? Or maybe your core is some of the disciplines, the things that you do every single day, whether you feel like it or not, right? So decisions and disciplines, and then skills. And as you build that, you'll find that your core becomes established. And then even in the most challenging situations with most challenging customers or scenarios, you find yourself just sitting up a little taller and being a little more certain of yourself.
That's beautiful. I love it, especially the piece, charging your worth, because I have experienced so many heart-centered people, especially coaches or creatives or light workers, healers, who have such amazing gifts. But when it actually comes to ask for what they want, like what kind of energy exchange, what kind of money, they scramble. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of choke when they make their offer, or they lose momentum. So how could they start to develop that core for themselves? Like what would be a little decision they could make today when listening now that would have an impact on future conversations with clients?
I love that question. So, and I think we can all as entrepreneurs relate to it. As I was telling you as we were chatting before we started today, the podcast, I remember when I first started speaking. I was a banker in my background, and I stepped out of banking to become a consultant and a speaker, and I was brand new to the whole thing. And I had so much to learn, and there was a lot of fear in that too. That was, going from, being an executive of a national bank to being a consultant, which is just code for unemployed, really. I mean, let's just say it like it is, right? And I did that intentionally. It was a choice that I made because I decided I wanted to design a different life. But I remember not knowing what to charge, right? And I was speaking a lot for free. I would speak to the clubs, right? The business groups and the networking groups for free, and people really enjoyed it. But you don't live your life for free. So I viewed that as being, okay, there's a season where you can practice, you can hone your craft, you can develop some referrals, right? You can get your name out there. But over time, and I love this advice from a friend of mine and a wonderful author and speaker, very talented man, Mark Sanborn. He wrote the book called The Fred Factor, among many others, but The Fred Factor is really one of those that stands out in the crowd of his books. And I asked him, I picked up the phone and called him at someone's recommendation, and I said, I don't know what to charge. And his advice was just so brilliant. He said, you charge whatever you can say without stuttering or blinking. And then as soon as that becomes comfortable, you double it, and you just keep doing that, right? And it sounds like frivolous, but it started out at a very low number. It did. It started, but I could say it without stuttering. And then once I got comfortable with that, so maybe part of the advice is there's probably two sides of this advice. One is get used to speaking without apologizing or defending or justifying. Here is the fee for my service, right? Here's what I charge. And then stop. Don't, because sometimes I think we use fillers like, I'm just, or, this is just, or, I'm not really too sure. No, here is the price that I charge for my services. And then I would also say, back that up with, and here's the benefit and the value that you'll receive for that, right? So it is an exchange. I love what you said, an exchange of energy, an exchange of value. So no apologizing for your pricing, no kind of backing away from that. It is just, this is what the price is. But I also think that it's the other side of that equation, beyond getting just comfortable with saying it without apologizing, is also to really then focus on the value that you're delivering, not on the price. So when I was in banking, I used to, I was involved in the sales functions, I was in charge of the sales force for the bank. And one of the things I used to tell people is that, our customers will, they will always pay for value perceived, right? So they will pay what they perceive the value is. So if there's a price issue, let's talk about the value. Let's not talk about the money. Let's talk about the value, because that's really where the conversation should live, I think.
Yeah, and I totally agree. So the challenge many people have, and I'm quite sure you would agree, is that seeing your own value for something that comes so easy to you, so natural, putting a price tag on it is quite a challenge when you start your own business. When you have to ask for somebody else, like for a company. And I used to work in high ticket event sales over the phone for a long time. That was a price. That was it, right? So you just ask for it. But then when you change and become an entrepreneur, it's really a little, little for some, a big challenge, but it was a little challenge for me at the beginning to find out, where do I want to start? What can I ask for? So how do you you said you started out at a smaller price. How did you back yourself up and got clarity of what you actually delivered?
I think that it started to happen for me because I started to receive the thank yous and I put this into practice and here's what it meant to me, the stories of success, where I started to see in living color the difference that I actually was making, the impact that I was having. And I realized that, and I really want to back up for a second and say I appreciate so much what you just said. Sometimes when something is our natural gift, maybe, and it becomes very easy for us, maybe then we tend to undervalue that. But really, I think that kind of gets back to that core, is to realize what is really easy for you. What comes naturally for you is not natural for everyone else, right? So it's really then kind of connecting back with again the value that you are delivering. But also, I think some of it is just how we talk to ourselves. It's what we say to ourselves. Like the neurolinguists tell us that 70% of our self-talk is negative. We beat ourselves up all day long from the inside out, right? So it's really hard to then go out and be super dynamic with other people when we're beating ourselves up from the inside out. So, when I talk about identifying those limiting beliefs, this is another example of that. Where are you limiting yourself? And I think that some of this is a pure negotiation or influence. Gets back to that idea of it is an exchange of value. Right? That it is an exchange. If you start to see it more as an exchange of value and making sure that the value that you receive is on par with the value that you give, right? And so doing some introspection, some reflection around that, and really being able to speak to the value of what you deliver, not the product that you deliver, but the difference your product makes. And I think sometimes we just talk about ourselves in the wrong way. Like I see the LinkedIn profiles all over the place. And if you review hundreds of those, you'll see it's my name, it's my title, it's my position, it's my company. That's not what you do, right? That's not the impact. So we're so busy talking about our title or our position versus the difference we make, the impact we have. And I think if we could really center on that, and it probably goes back to that core, to be so in touch with the value that you create, and you're so able to tell that value story that at some point with practice, and by the way, that's part of the core too, it's just practice. When I talked to you about the writing, that didn't happen in one lesson. It wasn't just one time. She said, what if you were to strengthen your core? I started doing exercises. I started practicing every single day. And what was very interesting is when I would straighten myself up, it felt awkward. I felt uncomfortable because I was not used to that kind of posture. And now I feel uncomfortable if I'm slouching, right? So it was muscle memory. It was practice. It was exercise. It might be standing in front of the mirror, right, in your home and delivering that price, that quote with the benefit and the value, not blinking, not flinching, right? So some of this is just about sheer practice. You do it so many times that it starts to feel more natural for you. And that may take a little while, especially if you're uncomfortable at the beginning. But I promise you, if you practice it over time, it will not be. So now when someone calls me or they email to say, will you, what would your fee be? I'm happy to my comment is always, I'm happy to share my fee structure with you. Before I do that, I'd like to talk about what you're trying to accomplish, right? I want to make sure that this is the right, that we're not just talking about money, but we're talking about value. And I'll actually say that. I'd rather talk about value first, then we can decide on the money, right? So I think that is a language that people speak as well. One last thing too is if you're searching for those limiting beliefs, here's a little exercise. For 1 week, write down, keep a log of your self-talk. If you don't know what those beliefs are, I promise you, for 1 week, you kind of keep track of what are you saying to yourself. You're going to find some empowering beliefs, like I'm really worth this. I bring value. My strengths and my skills are specialized, and they are well developed. Right? I have invested in my skill set. I have invested in my trade. Right? And you'll hear some also probably limiting beliefs. Is that too much? Was that good enough? Am I good enough? Right? So I think that to some degree, it's really about doing some of that reflective work to say, what am I believing about myself? Because if you don't believe you're worth it, I don't believe you're worth it. That's the bottom line of it. You know, and so if there's any part of you that's wondering, ooh, am I worth that? That's where you start. Because yes, you are. You absolutely are worth it.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And guys, just that you know, Dondi has an amazing program. It's called Mentor in a Box, because we both have mentors and have had coaches forever, so we can get to our next level. We can craft the gifts, make it better, add more value, and that would be a really cool way for you to join her mentorship by Mentor in a Box. I'm going to put you in the link in the show notes, so make sure you do check that out. What I would like to ask you, Donnie, when you talk about the value, so you don't answer the price question right away, because with so many people come and the first question they have is basically, what does it cost? And they, from the mindset here, that's already like a scarcity mindset, because it's not what do I need, and then
or what do I receive, right?
Then I figure out the money part. It's like, what does it cost? And talking about cost like all the time, I have had people in my life earlier on, before I made sure my environment was more supportive, that always talk, well, you know, this costs this much, and then I don't know, I got these beautiful shoes, and it was like there was always a price tag. So I had this conversation actually. I was like, it doesn't matter, like it's a value, like what are you getting out of it? So when you just set the exercise where people can have the self-talk log and see their limiting beliefs or their beliefs in general, like a person that permanently talks about prices of things has probably a money challenge.
Mm-hmm. I think that's insightful, what you just said. And I know that there have been times in my life where, and by the way, I believe human beings are a little bit like this. If I can find the value in it, I'm going to find a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? If the value resonates enough, then I'm going to find a way to pay for it. I will not let the price of something keep me from having that value in my life. And it's not really even about stuff, but maybe an experience, or maybe it's a because I tend to be a little bit of a minimalist in terms of I don't need more stuff, but I do want to learn and I want to grow. And sometimes people say, how much does it cost to have a horse? People always ask, and you know what I say? All of it. It costs all of it, right? It's not, yeah. But the value that I receive from that experience and what I'm learning about myself and about, just about growth and taking risks and being brave and having some courage and stretching yourself, there's no price that can be placed on that. What we pay for something is important up to the point of are we receiving the value in return? So I really do, when people would say, well, how much do you charge? I think we have to get ready with maybe some of our scripts, right? I could acknowledge that. I could say, what you pay for the services that you receive is important. In my experience, the value is the thing that really counts. So let's talk about what you're trying to create. Let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish through this, the impact that you're trying to have. Because I want to make sure that, and I will tell you, I want to make sure that that exchange of money to value is something you feel great about. Right? Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the value, and let's make sure that when we get to the money part of it, that exchange is not only appropriate, but it's something that makes a lot of sense for you. So I like having our scripts ready. In sales, I used to, when I was managing sales and sales folks, I would often say we would have what we would call an objections lab. And we would write down every possible objection that a customer might have to the price. Your rates are too high, your fees are too high, whatever that might be. And we would develop a response, and we would write that response out. And it was amazing, the experience I had. And by the way, the format that we used, we would always acknowledge the objection or the price question or the concern. And it might sound like what you pay for the services is very important, of course, right? That's just the acknowledgement. But then we would respond with something that, let's take a look at the value over time. Let's take a look at the impact that this will have so that we can make sure that price is reasonable for you. How does that sound? So the format is acknowledge, respond, and then ask another question to keep the flow of things going on. Well, what's really interesting about that process is that these salespeople that I work personally with, we would have these objection labs all of the time, and they became so good. Not that they were ever reading the script, but just by the fact that they had, as a group, collaborated and formulated these responses, it was just natural for them. And literally, there was nothing that a customer could say that would stop them. They were just so comfortable and so competent with their offerings. They were wildly successful. So in this organization, I had a couple of my colleagues and peers saying, could you, after hearing about this discipline, there's that core thing again, being ready for those objections, they said, could you type out those responses and then send them to everybody in all of the branches? Of course, we're happy to share. But what I realized was that, as a sales manager, when I would go into the branches and I would hear a customer objecting to a fee, or this was my favorite, saying that I'd like to close my account, and I would hear, okay, wait a second, there's a script for that. But what I realized was that if you weren't doing the heavy lifting of really thinking through, how would I acknowledge that? How would I respond to that? What's a question that I could ask to keep the conversation moving and guide the conversation? Unless you were involved in the process of creating those responses, it was just a hollow script. It doesn't work to just hand that to someone. So really, that's just a very tactical takeaway, is to make sure that you have brainstormed and developed a response, a quality response for every objection that you ever could encounter, and the confidence that you feel when you're just ready. Maybe you'll never hear those objections. That's fine too. But knowing that you're ready in case that does come up, that's a confidence builder. Preparation.
What a great interview. I just loved the idea that you really just sit down and then you think about all the objections and questions your customer could have. And this leads to clarity, and clarity leads to focus, and what we focus on expands. So if you're ready to expand your business, your revenue, if you're ready to serve more people, that is such a beautiful way to go. Thank you so much, Dondi, for sharing all your wisdom with us today. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. And for you, gorgeous, make sure you sign up for the 7-day free challenge to ask for the sale with confidence. You will dive into 7 days, you and I, with trainings, with support, so you can sell from your heart with ease, grace, confidence, and on your terms. Hop on over to christineschlonski.com/challenge or just christineschlonski.com for the amazing resources, the show notes, the transcript, all the podcast pages, and check out the podcast section on this page. Have a wonderful day. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you tune in to the next episode with Dondi, where she keeps sharing her amazing advice, knowledge, wisdom, so you can be set up for your sales game in 2019 and have even more fun and serve more people. Thank you so much for tuning in, and till next time, bye for now.